MoBushin, reply number 3. Now, you stated that Reagan had some sort of action in preventing nuclear war against the West, and that Reagan made Gorbachev kick down that wall, and for some reason that made the big bad threat do what Reagan did. And it was the fact that the communist system was already at its wit's end before that in the first place. Reagan just kind of licked the icing off the cake, and he was not actually really doing anything. I mean, as I said, I'm Polish, and I have Polish relatives and Polish friends, and I mean, we all know that the idea of Reagan doing anything about communists in the first place was the biggest crock bullshit ever. I mean, the communist government spent so much fucking money. I mean, they would give crappy social programs that they couldn't even afford in the first place, and then the economy became fucked because under the socialism, communism, no corporations wanted to go there to progress, and then of course they wanted to have a higher military budget, and what happened was they couldn't afford to do shit, and that's why communism collapsed, because it was a shitty system. And as I stated before, that Russia could not have done what it did if we did not let it do. I mean, we knew Stalin was killing his own people, and as you said, Stalin killed 40 million people, which is a reasonable estimate, although I've heard more between 18 and 25 million, but granted, they say it could be as much as 40 million, so I'll take your advice on that. But we funded Stalin knowing he was as bad, if not worse than Hitler, and I mean, like I said, why do we need to use pawns? I mean, why don't we just not fund anyone except for our own damn people? And then why should we fund tyrants and troops of tyrants and then wonder why things fuck up in the first place? I mean, like I said, with the Warsaw Uprising, and then it's just like, what do? We basically let the Russians just watch the Polish die, and then we basically just said, even though they were supposed to be allies, at that point, Americans could have went right to Warsaw, stopped the Warsaw Uprising for the Russians from going any further, and we could have at least held on to Poland. Now that is stating that we still funded him in the first place. If we never funded Stalin and the Russians in the first place and actually did our job instead of hiring tyrants to do a half-assed job, then I think that there would have never been a communist bloc in the first place. Because it's like where would it have gotten to? Maybe Ukraine, which is basically Russia number 2 in the first place, even though the Russians like to kill the Ukrainians too by getting rid of their fucking grains and making them starve to death to profit. But I mean, there would have been no threat if we did not enable the threat of communism. And the same thing goes for the terrorism threat. And granted, I'm for military, and I'm for having at least somewhat of a military, and using our home court isolation advantage so no one can fuck with us in the first place. And instead of fucking around and hiring tyrants to do our jobs, do our own fucking jobs if we have to do our jobs in the first place. And granted, as with probably every single American in America, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, I don't think there's anyone who would disagree with bombing Japan. I mean, I'm not that much of a wuss, and I understand that there's times when we go to war, but I tend to see these wars we're fighting now as the mistakes of the past. So, like I said, we don't need to hire pawns to do our dirty work. It's basically dirty work. Fuck giving anyone who's not an American our tax dollars, like Osama bin Laden or Stalin or any of them. Keep our money for our fucking selves. Do our own fucking work. Don't fucking give money to hire a half-assed tyrant. And that's my opinion. Reagan funding the Taliban, he funded Saddam. I mean, Reagan was small government. Let's give money to the Taliban. Let's give money to Saddam. And Clinton was the same way. He funded Osama, and it was a joke. We have a big problem fighting the Serbians because Serbia is sending 20 times more powerful than America. So let's hire bin Laden to fight the Serbians. Is that not a joke? Like, why do we need to hire Bin Laden in the first place to have even fought the Serbians? Like, are we that fucking, like, pathetic that we can? Of course we can fight the Serbians, so why do we need to hire tyrants to do our dirty work? We don't. And that's my opinion, and we don't need to make out, basically give tax dollars to tyrants, and then have those tyrants attack us, and then use more tax dollars to fight the war that we kind of funded in the first place. I mean, am I the only person that sees that as a waste? Maybe, I mean, maybe you think that's okay, but I don't, and you can believe what you want.